Welcome to this explainer. If you're building, deploying, or managing artificial intelligence systems today, you are operating on a constantly shifting geopolitical chessboard. It's a wildly complex time. So today, we're going to decode the urgent reality of this fractured global AI regulatory landscape. More importantly, we're going to break down exactly why shipping your AI products internationally now requires a modular architecture if you want to comply with a seriously diverse set of global rules. Let's get into it.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the global regulatory patchwork, look at 9 distinct emerging models, check out 3 regional heavyweights, dive into architecting modular compliance, and finish up with the true cost of waiting.
All right, part 1, the global regulatory patchwork.
We've got to start by shattering a pretty dangerous illusion that a lot of tech entrepreneurs and developers are currently clinging to. If you are sitting around waiting for the world to agree on a single unified standard before you ship your AI product globally, you are making a critical mistake. As our sources point out, there is absolutely no international consensus on fundamental issues, like, say, determining the right timeline for the safe release of AI models. The technology is evolving so fast, it's created this massive wave of uncertainty, and governments are responding to it in vastly different ways.
The reality, and this is drawn straight from our source material, is that global AI governance has already fractured. International organizations are floating treaties and high-level guidelines, sure, but at the national level, lawmakers are passing concrete, binding laws that look completely different depending on which border you happen to cross.
Which brings us to part 2, 9 distinct emerging models.
So what does this fragmentation actually look like on the ground? Well, UNESCO research mapped out 9 specific, emerging approaches that lawmakers worldwide are actively adapting. We aren't just looking at one way to govern AI. It's a whole mix. We're seeing everything from high-level ethical principles to adapting existing sector-specific laws in areas like health and finance, all the way to strict liability approaches that assign direct legal responsibility and sanctions for problematic AI outputs.
Think of these approaches sitting on a spectrum. You move from light touch, flexible ethical principles, all the way over to demanding, strict liability frameworks. At the light touch end, you have facilitating environments or agile testbeds like regulatory sandboxes that let you experiment. Move toward the middle and you hit transparency mandates, things like requiring you to disclose training data or visibly label AI-generated content. But push all the way to the demanding side and you hit hard, risk-based frameworks and liability rules. Depending on where your users are based, you might be dealing with just one of these or a major headache-inducing combination of several.
Let's move on to part 3, 3 regional heavyweights.
Let's see how this actually plays out in the real world with the biggest geopolitical players. You get an immediate, stark contrast between the United States and China. The US leans towards what the sources call a laissez-faire model. It's decentralized, it relies heavily on market-driven self-regulation, voluntary commitments from major AI players, and targeted executive orders rather than sweeping federal laws. Now flip to the extreme opposite pole, China utilizes a strict command and control model. They've enacted highly specific laws for things like algorithm recommendations and deep synthesis. They require strict state oversight, algorithm registries, and adherence to state-defined safety rules before a generative AI service can even be offered to the public.
Meanwhile, the European Union has adopted a co-regulatory approach. They classify AI systems into a 4-tiered risk pyramid. If your AI system sits at the very top and poses an unacceptable risk, like violating fundamental rights, it is completely banned, no questions asked. Move down a tier to high-risk systems, like those used in healthcare or law enforcement, and they face rigorous conformity assessments. Below that, you have transparency risks for things like chatbots and deepfakes, where you basically just have to inform users they're interacting with AI. And finally, sitting at the base, you have general-purpose AI models, which carry their own set of strict transparency and cybersecurity rules, especially if they pose a systemic risk. Now here is the absolute kicker for you as a developer or founder: extraterritorial scope. If your AI product is used in the EU, it must comply with European laws. This effectively makes the EU AI Act a global standard. Just like GDPR did for data privacy, this applies to any provider or deployer whose AI outputs are used within the European Union. You could be sitting in Silicon Valley or Singapore, but if a consumer in Paris uses your generative AI app, you are strictly bound by the AI Act.
Okay, part 4, architecting modular compliance.
This brings us to the core business and engineering challenge. How do you actually ship a product into this fractured reality? You obviously can't build a single rigid AI system that perfectly satisfies US market flexibility, Chinese algorithmic registries, and European risk pyramids all at the exact same time. Because AI models are developed, fine-tuned, and deployed across complex multi-party supply chains, the legal liability shifts at every single stage. Upstream, you've got massive infrastructure and foundation models. Downstream, you have deployers fine-tuning these models for specific use cases, and then the user-facing apps. Under new legal frameworks like the EU's Product Liability Directive, if a downstream deployer substantially modifies an AI model, they might suddenly take on the legal liability of an original developer.
So, what's the takeaway here? It means your products absolutely must be architected for modular compliance from day one. You have to decouple your systems. Step 1. Ensure your base foundation model has impeccable documentation and transparency regarding its pre-training data. That satisfies baseline global audits. Step 2. Utilize regional fine-tuning. Adjust the model's weights and guardrails depending on the specific geopolitical jurisdiction it's going to operate in. And Step 3. Implement localized front-end governance. This is where you apply specific UI guardrails, like the watermarking required by the EU or the specific content filters mandated by other regions. Modular architecture is no longer just some technical best practice, it is quite literally a legal survival mechanism.
Finally, Part 5, the cost of waiting.
Let's talk about why strategic hesitation is your biggest enemy in this AI arms race. Regulating under profound uncertainty means laws are evolving at the exact same time as the technology. You simply cannot wait for perfect clarity. As our source report beautifully puts it, governments are, to some extent, legislating in the dark. They're trying to balance the incredible, society-transforming benefits of AI with the need to ward off both present-day harms and hypothesized existential risks. Because the tech is a moving target, the regulations are going to be a moving target too.
If you wait around for clarity, you are simply handing the default rules to the early movers. Companies that deploy modular architectures early don't just capture the market, they often actively shape the very regulatory standards that the latecomers are going to be forced to accept. Remember, many of these frameworks, like the EU AI Act, rely heavily on harmonized standards and codes of practice that are drafted in direct collaboration with the industry. If you're sitting on the sidelines waiting to see how the dust settles, your competitors are already in the room, actively defining what state-of-the-art safety standards actually look like.
I want to leave you with this final vital question for your international AI strategy. Will you build to shape the rules or wait and let the rules shape you? The global AI divide is very real, and the legal frameworks are already setting the boundaries. But by embracing a modular approach to compliance right now, you don't just protect your product, you empower it to scale seamlessly across borders. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.